Well, as we are just a few months away from Epic Universe officially opening on May 22nd of this year, there are still some lingering questions about a lot of the details and aspects of this theme park and how it's going to operate. One of them, we do know Express Pass will be offered, but what will the pricing be for that? Will Express Pass be included at Epic Universe in the existing Universal hotels that offer unlimited Express Pass as a perk of staying there? And the other one being virtual queues. Is this going to be something that Universal is going to utilize in the opening phase, or really maybe the first year of operation, or maybe even further going on? And that's what we're going to talk about today in this video. So hi, I'm Jared with Capture the Magic. So there's a few things here that made me think about this. The first one being, last week we did see in the Universal app when it was showing the lands or the portals for Epic Universe that there was a virtual queue icon that was grayed out in each of the land tabs. Now that has since been removed from the app, but again, that is already in the app. I just don't think they wanted that to be shown yet, which has led a lot of people asking, like, are there going to be virtual queues when it comes to the lands? And will there be for the rides? And I think that's a valid question, because I think what's going to happen with the lands, and I talked about this in a previous video, I don't think you're going to have virtual queues for each land to get into right when you get into the park. I think what it's more than likely going to be is when a land, or if a land hits capacity, which is something that we do know has happened with Universal. This happened out in Hollywood when Super Nintendo World opened, and this also has happened with the Wizarding World lands, where the lands hit capacity and they limit the amount of people coming in until more people leave and they let more people in. I think a good way to handle that is probably a virtual queue. So I imagine when it comes to the lands, that is how the virtual queue there will work more than likely. So I don't think you're going to, get into the park and then have to get into a virtual queue for each land you want to get into. I just don't think that's what's going to happen. If that did happen, I don't think that would be a great guest experience. And if it did happen that way, I sure hope that it's a very, very short-term thing, because I just don't think that would set well with many people. I personally would be very critical of that if that's how they handled this for each and every land here. Now, when it comes to the rides, Universal is not known as much for virtual queues as, say, Walt Disney World. As we do know, they've ran virtual queues for Rise of the Resistance, for Cosmic Rewind, for Tiana's Bayou Adventure. They've used it for Ratatouille when it opened, not for very long, but they use it for new rides opening to help manage demand. And that is something a lot of people have become very accustomed with. But Universal has used it in the past. They used it for Hagrid's for a time period, but they're not as known for doing it. But I do think when you're looking at Epic Universe, there's some pretty good reasons as to why they may utilize virtual queue on certain attractions. And I don't think this is going to be for every attraction, because not every attraction is going to have the same amount of demand. If we look at the sheer, anticipation, or what we're hearing feedback of certain rides, I think there are some we could be looking at using virtual queue, and one of them being the Battle at the Ministry, which is at the Ministry of Magic, Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Now, this ride is very highly anticipated, and a lot of people have talked about it for years, and there's multiple ride manufacturers working on it. And currently, during team member previews, I do know from team members who have reached out to me that the Battle at the Ministry is not part of the team member previews. It is not currently running. Team members have been able to walk through the queue, check out, certain parts of it, but they haven't been able to ride the ride. And the reason that I'm being told is that they cannot get enough ride vehicles to go at the same time. Currently, they're only able to do about 2 to maybe 4 ride vehicles at a time, and not, I think it's supposed to be 10 or so ride vehicles that are supposed to go, at least how it was supposed to be designed, to work at the same time. Now, some of the team members to me said, the worrying is that it may not be ready for opening day. I think that would be a worst case scenario, or one of the worst case scenarios for Universal, if this highly anticipated ride was not ready for opening day. So I think they'll more than likely, work through these kinks, hopefully before opening day. But let's say that we get to opening day and it's still having some of these issues. I think what they would likely do is they would still offer it, even if they're only able to run 2 vehicles or 4 vehicles in the ride there. But instead of having a standby line, which again, this ride already is going to have a lot of demand, a lot of people want to go ride it, and it's the only ride that's in Ministry of Magic. You have a stage show in there, but you do not have any other ride. So if they're not able to get more ride vehicles working on this, I think what they would likely do is just make this ride virtual queue only, to limit the amount of people that would be able to essentially, ride it, but manage the demand, instead of having 5, 6, 7. I mean, we've seen 9-hour wait times when Hagrid's opened. Instead of having that, and then a lot of tension being on the fact that, the high demand, high wait times, they would likely use a virtual queue for this. You also could see virtual queue for the Monsters Unchained in the Dark Universe, as we're hearing really, really good reviews about that ride from team member previews. A lot of team members have said this is the best ride they've ever been on. So if it has a lot of high demand, you could see virtual queue for this one as well. And I think the other one you could see virtual queue for is for Minecart Madness over in Donkey Kong Country. Now, I say that because Super Nintendo World itself is going to be a very, very busy land. If I were to guess, I think it'll be the busiest land out of all the lands in Epic Universe if I were to guess. I mean, Nintendo is a massive property, and it's something a lot of people are looking forward to, myself included, my kids included, and it's multi-generational for that reason. So I think that Super Nintendo World, if any land I was going to guess would hit capacity and have to go into virtual queue, it would be Super Nintendo World as the number one spot to me. And one of the reasons being that this ride doesn't move a lot of people through per hour. And unlike some of the other attractions where we just don't really know what the demand looks like, we can look at over in Universal Studios Japan, because they have their Donkey Kong Country that just opened up. They also have Minecart Madness out there. And we look at the average wait times here for Minecart Madness out there in Japan. The average wait time is 177 minutes. Maximum wait time is showing us 280 minutes. So this ride has a lot of demand, and it also doesn't move a lot of people through it per hour. So I could see Universal potentially using virtual queue for this one as well. Or they may not use virtual queues at all. It's an unknown thing at this point, but I'm not going to be surprised if Universal does use virtual queues for these high demand rides. As you know, virtual queues are a mixed bag. I understand from a theme park perspective, the idea is instead of people just waiting in line, not doing anything, they can essentially be in a virtual line and do other things in the theme park. But from a guest standpoint, I think most people would just rather, if they want to ride a ride, they would rather just be able to get on the ride or wait in whatever the wait time is for that ride, and not be left to chance potentially of just a virtual lottery of sorts. So some people like virtual queues, some people don't. Depends on really your experience level with theme parks. A lot of people know how to navigate them, but some people, you know, if you don't go that often to theme parks, it may be something that you find cumbersome. But the argument against using virtual queues is if you have people that are in virtual queues, they're also going to be in lines in other places in Epic Universe, potentially making other wait times go up. Now, you do have a lot of attractions to sort of spread people out here, but that is the other thing you'd have to balance us with. Now, the benefit of Epic Universe is there's a lot of things to do outside of just rides in Epic Universe. You're going to have entertainment. You're going to have lots of food options. You're going to have character meet and greets. There's lots of Easter eggs in each of these lands for guests to check out. So theoretically speaking, you may not just have people go directly into other rides. Obviously, rides are a major thing. That's the most headlining thing people are going to want to do. But there's other things in the park that people are going to be able to do, shopping being one of them as well. Now, one thing that's going to play a major role in if, you know, virtual queues are used or how much they're being used at Epic Universe, if they do use them for the lands and the attractions, is going to be the park capacity of Epic Universe. We don't know what the park capacity is going to be. We do have a post over here from Wallen Ballin on X Twitter. He says, for Epic Universe team previews, I'm being told that capacity is capped at 5,000. For the very first day, they went with 3,500, then 4,500, and then 5,000 for the foreseeable future. Because I'd imagine we see these numbers increased for friends and family days as the park staff and operations work up gradually to handle 20,000 to 30,000 guests per day. Now, if we look at a similar sized park over at Disney World, which would be Hollywood Studios, I mean, similar size, similar amount of attractions, that park's capacity is 60,000 guests. And that park has its issues with wait times already. Now I will say the attractions and the varying, I guess you could say, demand for those attractions, I think obviously it's very heavy on Rise of the Resistance, Slinky Dog Dash, and rides like that. So when you're looking at Epic Universe, if they were to go to say 50, 60,000 guests per day, I think you would probably be looking at a virtual queue system. Again, just me speculating here, as that would be a lot of people in that park. But you could see Universal really try and come in slow on the opening time period with Epic Universe, because like I've said before, undoubtedly there are going to be issues that are going to pop up no matter how many previews you do, where, you know, rides go down, things happen in the park. And the more people you have in a park when these things happen, the more unhappy guests you're going to have, and the more negative feedback that you're going to have. And then it would become a narrative about, you know, people being unhappy. There's all sorts of issues at Epic Universe. And I think they want to, you know, they're going to have to try and balance, you know, demand, making money, but also wanting this to go, you know, the opening time period go forward very smoothly and have as few issues as you can. So if they go with, say this is accurate, 20 to 30,000 guests per day when it opens, you may not look at a virtual queue system because they just wouldn't have enough people in the park that would clog up these lines and really have that much, you know, of an issue with lands being at capacity. I mean, you still could potentially have that, or some of these rides being at capacity. It would be less of a potential of virtual queues being used in that situation. So I think a lot of this is going to depend on what that park capacity is. I don't think Universal is probably going to say, when it comes to park capacity numbers, we do know what Disney World's, park capacity is for their theme parks. There's no official numbers from Universal on what their park capacity is on their existing park. So we may not get an actual number from Universal. So that is going to be a major caveat here in terms of how many tickets or how many people are they letting into Epic Universe. So it'll be interesting to see how Universal handles this. But I think undoubtedly, what we see from what was in the app originally, they have built in virtual queues, potentially even as a backstop, as it being in there, where if the demand is there, they can use them. Again, this is just speculation. I'm just going off of, knowing theme parks, how they tend to operate, and they could take a wait and see approach when it comes to lands and attractions, whether they use virtual queues or not, as they try and manage the demand. Because a lot of this demand is really, they don't really know, where this is going to go. They don't, obviously a new land opening, you can anticipate there's going to be a lot of demand. Like when the Wizarding World's opened, one land opening, you have one attraction, say in Diagon Alley, you can, really anticipate, okay, there's going to be a ton of people coming in here. We need to use virtual queue for this, or however you end up doing that. But when you talk about a brand new theme park, you have 5 new lands, all this new stuff to do. There is a lot of things to spread people out in terms of attractions. Basically, everything in the park is going to be unknown at that point. So theoretically, there could be enough things for people to do where they don't need to use virtual queue. If I were to bet, I think there probably will be at least 1 to 2 attractions that utilize virtual queue, and then the lands would just be as a need basis. If a land hits capacity, it goes into virtual queue, but not every land needing it first thing in the morning as soon as you get into the theme park. That would be my guess. That's my speculation, at least on this topic here. But either way, that's going to be it though for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, do you think that Universal is going to utilize a virtual queue when it comes to lands and attractions in Epic Universe? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.